How did a quiet night at a bar with my girlfriend's father lead to the unraveling of his reputation and my own escape from his control? When a mysterious bartender slipped me a small box under my chair, I never expected it would expose the poison in my drink and in my relationship. The final reckoning left my girlfriend's father stunned and powerless as our lives changed forever in one abrupt moment. The Oaks Bar and Grill had become Raymond Warren's hunting ground. Every man who dared to date his daughter Lindsey eventually found himself sitting across from Ray at the polished mahogany bar, enduring what he called getting to know each other. I'd heard the stories from Lindsey about her previous boyfriends, successful men who'd mysteriously disappeared from her life after these little chats with Daddy. Tonight was my turn. At 32, I thought I'd outgrown being intimidated by anyone's father. I ran my own tech startup, had a decent apartment, and treated Lindsey with the respect she deserved. But Raymond Warren wasn't just anyone's father. He was old money, the kind of wealth that came with a sprawling estate, political connections, and the ability to ruin careers with a phone call. Tanner Grant, Ray said my name like it tasted bitter as he settled onto the bar stool beside me. At 61, he carried himself with the arrogance of a man who'd never been told no. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his suit probably cost more than my monthly rent, and his pale blue eyes held the cold calculation of a predator sizing up prey. Tell me about this little computer business of yours. The way he said little made my jaw clench, but I kept my voice steady. We develop software solutions for small businesses. Nothing glamorous, but it's growing steadily. Growing steadily. Ray signaled the bartender with a casual wave that screamed entitlement. That's what poor people say when they're not actually making money. The bartender approached, a middle-aged man with graying temples and the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much. His name tag read Derek, and something in his dark eyes flickered when he looked between Ray and me. There was recognition there, and something else. Warning, maybe. What'll it be, Mr. Warren? Derek's voice was carefully neutral, professional. Macallan 25 for me, and... Ray looked me up and down dismissively. Something more appropriate for my guest. House whiskey should do. The insult was deliberate, designed to put me in my place before we'd even started drinking. Derek's expression tightened almost imperceptibly as he poured the drinks. When he set mine down, our eyes met briefly, and I caught that look again, concern mixed with something that might have been pity. So, Tanner, Ray continued as Derek moved away, Lindsey tells me you've been together 8 months. That's longer than most of her experiments. I don't consider our relationship an experiment, sir. Ray laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Of course you don't. You probably think this is going somewhere permanent. Let me save you some time and embarrassment. It's not... I took a sip of the whiskey, fighting to keep my expression neutral. The liquid burned going down, but not as much as Ray's words. With respect, Mr. Warren, that's between Lindsey and me. Is it? Ray's smile was all teeth, no warmth. You think my daughter makes decisions without considering her family's input? You think she'll choose a man who can't even afford top-shelf whiskey over everything I've provided for her? The bartender Derek was polishing glasses nearby, but I noticed he kept glancing our way. There was something deliberate about how he positioned himself within earshot. I think Lindsey is intelligent enough to make her own choices, I said carefully. Intelligence. Ray swirled his expensive whiskey thoughtfully. Yes, she's intelligent. Intelligent enough to know that real men don't struggle to pay rent. Real men don't drive 10-year-old cars or shop at discount stores. Real men provide security, stability, a future worth having. Each word was a calculated blow, designed to chip away at my confidence. I dealt with difficult clients, hostile investors, and cutthroat competitors, but Ray Warren operated on a different level. This wasn't business, this was personal warfare. Excuse me, Ray said suddenly, standing. I need to use the restroom. Don't go anywhere, Tanner. We're just getting started. As Ray walked away, his expensive shoes clicking against the hardwood floor, I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. The bar's ambient noise, quiet conversations, clinking glasses, soft jazz, seemed to rush back in as if Ray's presence had been sucking the life out of the room. That's when Derek moved. He appeared beside my chair so quietly I almost didn't notice. Without a word, he slid a small cardboard box under my seat, his movements swift and practiced. The box was maybe 3 inches square, unmarked except for what looked like a pharmacy label. Hide this, Derek whispered, leaning close enough that no one else could hear. His voice was urgent, serious. You'll need it tonight. Before I could respond, before I could ask what the hell he was talking about, Derek had already moved away, returning to his position behind the bar as if nothing had happened. I stared at him, but he avoided my gaze, suddenly very busy arranging bottles. My heart was pounding as I casually reached down and palmed the small box, slipping it into my jacket pocket. The cardboard felt substantial, like it contained something important. A dozen questions raced through my mind, but Ray's approaching footsteps cut them short. Where were we? Ray settled back onto his stool, that predatory smile returning. Ah, yes, we were discussing your limitations. The next hour was a masterclass in psychological dismantling. Ray dissected every aspect of my life with surgical precision: my middle-class background, my state school education, my modest apartment, my quaint startup. He never raised his voice, never used profanity, but every word was designed to strike with maximum impact. You know, Ray said as we finished our drinks, I've always admired ambition, but there's a difference between ambition and delusion. Knowing your place in the world, that's wisdom. I felt a strange warmth spreading through my chest, and for a moment the room seemed to tilt slightly, the whiskey hitting harder than expected maybe, or just the stress of the evening. Derek caught my eye from across the bar, and that look of concern was back, more pronounced now. I should probably head home, I said, standing carefully. Probably wise, Ray agreed, tossing a $100 bill on the bar like it was pocket change. Give my regards to Lindsey. Tell her we had a nice chat about your future together, or lack thereof. The drive to the Warren estate felt surreal. Ray followed in his BMW while I navigated my 10-year-old Honda through the winding roads that led to his sprawling property. The house sat on 20 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, all white columns and old money elegance. It was the kind of place that made you feel small just looking at it. Lindsey met us at the door, her face lighting up when she saw me. At 27, she had her father's intelligence, but none of his cruelty. Her auburn hair caught the porch light, and her green eyes searched my face with concern. How did it go? She asked quietly as we entered the marble foyer. Wonderfully, Ray answered before I could speak. Tanner and I had a very enlightening conversation about expectations and reality. Lindsey's mother Margaret appeared from the sitting room, a pale echo of her husband's authority. At 59, she'd learned to navigate Ray's moods by staying invisible, speaking only when spoken to. Tanner, Ray announced to the room, his voice carrying the theatrical quality of a man who enjoyed his own performance, was just telling me about his business. Apparently he's growing steadily. The way he said it made it sound like a disease. The warmth in my chest was spreading, and I felt slightly nauseous. Stress, probably, or maybe I'd eaten something off earlier. But Derek's concerned face kept flashing in my mind, along with the weight of that mysterious box in my pocket. Dad, Lindsey's voice carried a warning edge. Tanner works very hard. I'm sure he does, Ray said smoothly. Hard work is admirable. It's just a shame when hard work isn't enough to overcome fundamental limitations. The room felt like it was spinning slightly, and I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. Margaret noticed, her eyebrows raising in polite concern. Are you feeling all right, dear? She asked. Just tired, I managed, though the nausea was getting worse. It's been a long day. Ray raised his glass of brandy. Apparently the evening's humiliation wasn't over yet. To knowing one's place in the world, he said, that cold smile never wavering. And to making smart choices about the future. As he spoke, I caught a glimpse of Derek through the window, standing by his car in the parking lot of the Oaks. Even from a distance, even in the dim light, I could see him watching the estate, waiting. The small box in my pocket felt like it was burning against my chest. The nausea hit me full force the moment I walked into my apartment. I barely made it to the bathroom before my stomach rebelled, bringing up everything I'd consumed that evening. The heaving came in harsh, uncontrollable waves, leaving me trembling on the cold tile floor. When the worst of it passed, I sat back against the bathtub, my head spinning. This wasn't normal. I'd had maybe 2 drinks over the course of 2 hours, and I wasn't exactly a lightweight. Something was wrong. The box. With trembling hands, I pulled Derek's mysterious package from my jacket pocket. The pharmacy label was partially torn, but I could make out anti-nausea activated charcoal and what looked like emergency instructions. My heart stopped. Inside the box were 2 items, a small bottle of pills and a napkin with careful handwriting in blue ink. The message was short but chilling. Take this and make yourself vomit. He's done this before. You're not the first. D. The pills rattled as my hands shook. Anti-nausea medication, activated charcoal, the kind of things you'd give someone who'd been poisoned. Poisoned? The realization struck with brutal force. Ray Warren had tampered with my drink. The same man who'd spent 2 hours methodically tearing down my confidence had also tried to incapacitate me. But why? What was the end game? I followed Derek's instructions, taking the medication and forcing myself to vomit again. The pills helped almost immediately. The spinning sensation eased, and the crushing nausea began to fade. But the horror of what had happened was just beginning to sink in. My phone buzzed. Lindsey. Hey, you left so quickly? Dad said you weren't feeling well? I stared at the message, my mind racing. How much did Lindsey know? Was she part of this? Or was she as much a victim as I was? Just tired, I typed back. Long day. But as I sat there on my bathroom floor, surrounded by evidence of what Ray had done, memories started flooding back. This wasn't the first time I'd felt sick after spending time with Ray Warren. 3 months ago, at Lindsey's birthday dinner at the country club, I'd felt dizzy and nauseous after Ray had insisted on buying me drinks. I'd chalked it up to nerves and rich food, but now, 2 months before that, at a family barbecue at the Warren estate, Ray had made a point of personally handing me a beer. I'd spent the rest of the evening feeling off balance and foggy, unable to participate in conversations the way I normally would. Lindsey had been disappointed, and Ray had made several comments about my inability to keep up. The pattern was unmistakable once I knew what to watch for. Ray Warren had been systematically sabotaging me, making me seem weak, unreliable, unfit for his daughter. And tonight, Derek the bartender had spared me from whatever Ray had intended. My phone rang. Lindsey. Tanner? I'm worried about you. You looked really pale when you left. Her voice was soft, concerned, completely innocent. Whatever Ray was doing, she didn't know about it. Can you come over? I asked. There's something I need to tell you. Of course. I'll be right there. While I waited for Lindsey, I did some research on my laptop. Activated charcoal was used to treat poisoning. The anti-nausea medication Derek had given me was typically prescribed for people who'd ingested toxic substances. Someone with medical knowledge had put together this emergency kit. I thought about Derek's face, the way he'd watched Ray and me throughout the evening. He's done this before, the note had said. You're not the first. How many of Lindsey's previous boyfriends had sat in that same bar, sipping tainted whiskey while Ray Warren carried out his twisted schemes? How many had gone home feeling unwell and disoriented, never realizing someone had deliberately interfered with them? How many relationships had Ray quietly dismantled this way? When Lindsey arrived, her face was drawn tight with worry. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked young and exposed, nothing like the polished society princess her father wanted her to become. What's wrong? She asked at once, studying my face. You look awful. I handed her the box, the pills, and Derek's note. Lindsey read the message 3 times before lifting her eyes to me, her green eyes wide with shock. This can't be real. I got sick twice tonight, I said quietly. Once when I got home, once after I took the pills Derek gave me. I feel better now, but Lindsey, your father interfered with my drink. She sank onto my couch, the note still clutched in her hands. But why would he... I mean, he's been difficult, but this is... criminal, I finished. This is criminal. Lindsey was quiet for a long time, staring at the evidence in her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and broken. Mason, she whispered. Who? Mason Fitzgerald. I dated him about 2 years ago. He was a lawyer, really successful, everything Dad said he wanted for me. But after they met for drinks, Mason started acting strange. Paranoid, sick, unable to focus at work. He said he felt like he was losing his mind. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was uglier than I'd imagined. What happened to him? He broke up with me, said he couldn't handle the stress of our relationship, that he needed to focus on his health. I was devastated. Dad was sympathetic. He said Mason obviously wasn't strong enough to be part of our family. And before Mason? Lindsey's face was pale. Trevor Blackwood, investment banker. Same thing. They had drinks. Trevor started having problems at work, acting erratic. He ended up having some kind of breakdown and moved back to his hometown. How many, Lindsey? She closed her eyes. 4, maybe 5. They all fell apart after meeting Dad. I thought it was just the pressure. Dad can be intimidating, and maybe they realized they weren't ready for a serious relationship. Or maybe your father has been systematically destroying your relationships for years. The words hung in the air between us like a physical presence. Lindsey looked at Derek's note again, her hands shaking. He's been controlling my entire life, she said finally. Every man I've ever cared about, every relationship I've tried to build, he's destroyed them all. My phone buzzed with a text message. Ray Warren. Tanner, I hope you're feeling better. Lindsey mentioned you seemed unwell. Perhaps it's a sign that you're not as resilient as you thought. Some people just aren't built for the pressures of our world. I showed the message to Lindsey, and her face hardened with an anger I'd never seen before. "That man," she whispered, "he's enjoying this." Another message arrived. "I've taken the liberty of making some inquiries about your business. Interesting what you can learn about a person's financial situation when you know the right people. We should talk soon about Lindsey's future. I'd hate for her to make a decision she'd regret." The threat was clear. Ray Warren wasn't just content with poisoning me. He was going after my livelihood. "He's threatening your business now," Lindsey said, reading over my shoulder. "Let him try." But even as I said it, I felt a chill. Ray Warren had connections I couldn't imagine, resources I couldn't match. If he wanted to destroy my company, he probably could. Lindsey stood up suddenly, pacing to the window. "I can't do this anymore, Tanner. I can't let him keep controlling my life, hurting people I care about." "What are you saying?" She turned to face me, and I saw steel in her green eyes that reminded me of her father, but directed toward justice instead of cruelty. "I'm saying it's time someone fought back." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Ray. "Sleep well, Tanner. Tomorrow we'll discuss your future, or lack thereof." I looked at Lindsey, at the evidence of her father's crimes scattered across my coffee table, at the medication that had probably saved my life. Derek, the bartender, had taken a risk to help me, had probably been watching Ray's victims for years, waiting for someone who might actually fight back. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. Lindsey's smile was sharp as a blade. "Dad's always said that knowledge is power. Let's see how he likes it when someone else holds the cards." The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The fog that had been clouding my thoughts, the self-doubt, the constant second-guessing, the feeling that maybe Ray Warren was right about my limitations, was gone. Knowing that I'd been deliberately undermined was horrifying, but it was also liberating. I wasn't weak or inadequate. I'd been tampered with. My first stop was the Oaks Bar and Grill. Derek was working the morning shift, preparing for lunch service. When he saw me walk in, his weathered face showed a mixture of relief and apprehension. "You got my message," he said quietly, glancing around the empty bar. "Thank you," I said simply. "You saved my life last night." Derek gestured toward a door marked "Staff Only." "We should talk in private." The back room was small and cluttered, filled with extra bottles, cleaning supplies, and paperwork. Derek closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly looking older than his 45 years. "How long have you been watching him?" I asked. 3 years, Derek said. "Ever since I started working here. Ray Warren comes in maybe once a month, always with some young man, always his daughter's latest boyfriend, and they always end up sick." "Why didn't you call the police?" Derek laughed bitterly. "With what proof? Ray Warren is careful. He never brings his own substances. He has them delivered. Anonymous packages left at the bar, always when I'm busy with other customers. By the time I realize what's happening, the evidence is gone. But you know what he's doing." "I know, but I can't prove it. And Ray Warren has friends in high places. You think the police are going to take the word of a bartender against a man who donates millions to their fundraisers?" I understood. Derek was trapped, watching crime after crime, but powerless to stop them. "You said I wasn't the first. How many others?" Derek's expression darkened. "That I've seen personally? 7, maybe 8. But I've heard stories from other staff members, people who worked here before me. This has been going on for years." "What happened to them?" "Same pattern every time. They get sick, start acting erratic, can't function properly. Their relationships with Lindsey fall apart. Some of them had professional problems, lost jobs, failed businesses, health issues that couldn't be explained." I thought about Mason Fitzgerald, the lawyer who'd become paranoid and unfocused. Trevor Blackwood, the investment banker who'd had a breakdown. How many lives had Ray Warren destroyed? "I used to be a paramedic," Derek continued, "before I started bartending. I recognized the signs of poisoning, but Ray's smart. He uses substances that metabolize quickly, things that are hard to detect unless you know exactly what to look for. That's why you had the medication ready. I've been carrying that kit for months, waiting for the right moment. Most of his victims never come back here after that first night. But something about you was different. You looked like a fighter." I pulled out my phone and showed Derek the threatening messages Ray had sent the night before. His face hardened as he read them. "He's escalating," Derek said. "Usually he's more subtle than this. He's going after my business now, making inquiries about my finances." "That's new." Derek looked worried. "Ray Warren has never gone after someone's livelihood so directly before." "Maybe because none of his other victims fought back." Derek studied my face. "You're planning something." Lindsey and I are planning something. We're done being victims. Derek was quiet for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. Security footage from last night. It shows Ray slipping something into your drink while you were looking away. The camera angle isn't perfect, but it's clear enough. I stared at the drive. Why are you helping me? Because I'm tired of watching good people get destroyed by that monster, and because you're the first one who might actually be able to stop him. I pocketed the USB drive. What else do you know about his methods? He has a contact at a private pharmacy, someone who provides him with untraceable substances. I've seen the delivery guy, young, nervous, always paid in cash. Ray's careful to never handle the packages himself. Any idea which pharmacy? Derek shook his head. But I know Ray keeps records. He's obsessive about documentation, probably has files on every man he's targeted. That was interesting. Ray Warren was methodical, which meant he was vulnerable. Methodical people left trails. I thanked Derek and headed to my office, my mind already working on the next phase of our plan. But when I arrived at my startup's modest downtown space, I found my business partner Allison Rivera waiting for me with a grim expression. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. Allison was 34, brilliant, and had been my partner since we'd started the company 3 years ago. She had an MBA from Northwestern and a talent for reading people that bordered on supernatural. If she looked worried, there was good reason. "What's wrong?" I asked, unlocking my office. 3 of our biggest clients called this morning. Someone's been making inquiries about our financial stability, asking questions about your personal life, suggesting that the company might not be reliable long-term. A chill swept through me. Ray Warren was moving fast. "What kind of questions?" "Personal stuff. Your relationship with Lindsey Warren, your family background, your college grades. Someone's doing a deep dive into your life, Tanner, and they're using what they find to undermine client confidence." I sank into my desk chair, the scope of Ray's attack becoming clear. He wasn't just going after my relationship with Lindsey. He was trying to destroy my entire life. "There's more," Allison continued. "I got a call from Mason Jossman at First National. Someone approached him about calling in our business loan early. Mason wouldn't say who, but he seemed nervous. Ray Warren was using his connections to strangle my business, cutting off funding and scaring away clients. It was sophisticated, ruthless, and probably completely legal. "What do you want to do?" Allison asked. I thought about Derek's USB drive, about the evidence we were gathering, about Lindsey's determination to fight back. Ray Warren thought he was dealing with another weak victim he could crush at will. He was about to learn otherwise. "I want you to start backing up everything," I said. "Client files, financial records, source code, contracts, everything important gets copied to secure off-site storage." "You think he's going to try to destroy our data?" "I think Ray Warren is capable of anything, and I want to be ready." Allison nodded, her expression grim but determined. "What else?" "Start researching business incorporation in other states. Quietly. If we need to move operations, I want to know our options." "Tanner, what's going on? This isn't just about an overprotective father, is it?" I looked at my business partner, my friend, the person who'd believed in our company when everyone else thought we were crazy. She deserved the truth. "Ray Warren tampered with me last night. He's been systematically undermining every man his daughter has dated, sabotaging their relationships and their lives. And now he's coming after our business." Allison stared at me for a long moment, then reached for her laptop. "What do you need me to do?" The rest of the day was a blur of preparation and research. While Allison worked on securing our business assets, I dove into Ray Warren's background. What I found was disturbing. Ray had a pattern of using his wealth and connections to destroy people who crossed him. A former business partner who'd tried to expose Ray's unethical practices had been bankrupted by a series of mysterious lawsuits and regulatory challenges. A journalist who'd investigated Ray's political donations had been fired after allegations of plagiarism surfaced, allegations that were later proven false, but only after his career was ruined. Ray Warren was a predator who used the legal system and social pressure as weapons. He was smart, patient, and utterly ruthless. But he'd made one mistake. He'd underestimated his latest target. My phone buzzed with a message from Lindsey. "Found something in Dad's study. Can you come over tonight? He's at a business dinner until late." I was about to respond when another message arrived, this one from an unknown number. "Mr. Grant, this is Detective Paul Monroe with the City Police. I'd like to speak with you about some allegations that have been brought to my attention regarding your business practices. Please call me at your earliest convenience." My hands went cold. Ray Warren was moving on multiple fronts now, probably trying to get me arrested on some trumped-up charge. But as I stared at the detective's message, I realized something important. Ray was getting desperate. He was abandoning his usual subtle approach and going for a direct assault. That meant he saw me as a real threat. Good. He should be afraid. I texted Lindsey back. On my way. And Lindsey, tell your father I said thank you. For what? For showing me exactly how dangerous he really is. Now I know what we're up against. Lindsey's loft was a 20-minute drive from my office, located in the trendy arts district downtown. It was her one act of rebellion against her father's control, a space that was entirely hers, decorated with modern art and sleek furniture that Ray Warren would have considered common. She'd bought it with money from her trust fund, the one thing Ray couldn't take away from her. When I arrived, Lindsey was pacing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her auburn hair catching the late afternoon light. She looked like she hadn't slept, her usual composure replaced by barely contained fury. I found his files, she said without preamble, gesturing toward a manila folder on her glass coffee table. The folder was thick, bulging with documents and photographs. When I opened it, a chill ran through me. Ray Warren had been keeping detailed records of his campaign against me. Bank statements obtained through some kind of private investigation, credit reports, background checks going back to my college years, photos of me entering and leaving my office, my apartment, even Derek's bar. There were psychological profiles, financial analyses, and what looked like a comprehensive plan for my destruction. This is insane, I breathed, flipping through page after page of documentation. It gets worse, Lindsey said quietly. Look at the dates. The earliest document was dated 8 months ago, the week after Lindsey and I had our first date. Ray Warren had been planning my destruction from the very beginning of our relationship. He never gave you a chance, Lindsey said, her voice thick with emotion. He decided to destroy you before he even met you. But it wasn't just about me. The folder held similar files on Mason Fitzgerald, Trevor Blackwood, and 3 other men I didn't recognize. Ray had been cataloging his targets, preserving records of their ruin like someone obsessively collecting proof of his control. Look at this, Lindsey said, pulling out a handwritten note in Ray's distinctive script. Subject shows unusual resilience, the note read. Standard psychological pressure insufficient. Recommend escalating to pharmaceutical intervention and direct financial assault. Target's business partner may be leverage point. Consider approaching Detective Monroe regarding potential fraud allegations. I stared at the note, my mind racing. Ray Warren had been planning every move, anticipating my responses, preparing contingencies for different scenarios. This wasn't the work of an angry father. This was the systematic planning of a criminal mastermind. He's been manipulating Detective Monroe, I said. That's why the police called me today. Lindsey nodded grimly. Dad's donated a lot of money to the police benevolent fund over the years. He has friends in the department. I pulled out my phone and showed Lindsey the detective's message. Her face went pale. He's going to have you arrested? He's going to try. Probably some kind of fraud allegation related to my business. Ray's been gathering financial information for months. I'm sure he can make something look suspicious if he tries hard enough. Lindsey sank onto her couch, the weight of her father's crimes finally hitting her. I can't believe I didn't see it before. All those men, all those relationships that fell apart. He destroyed them all. You couldn't have known. Ray's been careful, subtle. He made it look like natural failures, personal weaknesses. But I should have questioned it. I should have wondered why every man I cared about suddenly became unreliable, erratic, unable to handle the pressure of our relationship. I sat beside her, taking her hands in mine. Your father is a master manipulator. He's been controlling your life for years, making you doubt your own judgment. That's what abusers do. They make their victims feel responsible for the abuse. Lindsey's green eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. What do we do now? I looked at the evidence scattered across her coffee table. Ray's meticulous documentation of his crimes, his plans for my destruction, his systematic targeting of Lindsey's boyfriends. It was damning, but it was also our weapon. We fight back, I said, but we do it smart. Ray Warren thinks he's the only one who can play chess. Time to show him he's wrong. Over the next few hours, Lindsey and I developed our strategy. First, I called my lawyer, Patricia Paulson, and arranged an emergency meeting for the next morning. Patricia was sharp, experienced, and had helped me navigate the legal complexities of starting my business. She'd know how to handle Ray's assault. Next, I contacted my sister, Chelsea. At 29, Chelsea was a social worker with a master's degree in psychology and a deep understanding of family manipulation tactics. She'd been suspicious of Ray Warren from the beginning, warning me that his behavior toward Lindsey showed classic signs of psychological abuse. I knew something was wrong with that man, Chelsea said when I called her. The way he talks about Lindsey like she's his property instead of his daughter. It's textbook narcissistic control. Can you help us document the psychological abuse angle? I asked. We need to show a pattern of behavior, not just isolated incidents. Absolutely. I'll put together a profile of his manipulation tactics. This kind of systematic targeting of his daughter's relationships is a form of psychological warfare. While I made calls, Lindsey worked on copying her father's files. We photographed every document, every note, every piece of evidence that showed Ray's criminal behavior. The USB drive Derek had given me contained security footage of the poisoning. Combined with Ray's own documentation, we had enough evidence to destroy him. But evidence wasn't enough. Ray Warren had money, connections, and decades of experience in destroying his enemies. We needed to be smarter, more strategic. We can't just go to the police, I said as we worked. Ray has friends there. Detective Monroe is probably already convinced I'm some kind of criminal. What about the media? Lindsey suggested. Ray owns half the local media outlets, and the other half depend on his advertising money. They won't touch this story. Then what? I thought about Ray's greatest weakness, his pride. He was arrogant, convinced of his own superiority, certain that no one could challenge him. That arrogance would be his downfall. We make him destroy himself, I said finally. Ray Warren's greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. He can't resist showing off his power. We give him a stage, let him perform, and make sure the right people are watching when he reveals his true nature. Lindsey looked intrigued. What kind of stage? Your father loves public confrontations. He gets off on humiliating people in front of witnesses, so we give him what he wants, a chance to gloat, to show everyone how powerful he is. And then? And then we show them who he really is. My phone buzzed with another message from Ray. Tanner, I hope you've had time to consider our conversation last night. I'm hosting a small celebration tomorrow evening. Family and close friends. Lindsey will want to be there, and I'm sure she'd like you to join us. It would be a shame if work obligations prevented you from attending. The threat was clear. Show up or face the consequences. I showed the message to Lindsey, and her expression hardened. He's planning something. Dad doesn't host small celebrations unless he has an audience for one of his performances. Perfect, I said, typing a response. Tell him we'll be there. Tanner, this could be dangerous. If Dad's planning to have you arrested, or if he tries to interfere with you again, let him try. This time, we'll be ready. I spent the rest of the evening preparing for war. Allison had successfully backed up all our business files to secure servers in 3 different states. My lawyer, Patricia, had reviewed the evidence and confirmed that we had grounds for criminal charges against Ray Warren. Chelsea had put together a psychological profile that clearly documented Ray's pattern of abuse. But most importantly, I'd made a decision about the future. Whatever happened at Ray's celebration tomorrow night, Lindsey and I weren't staying in this city. Ray Warren's influence was too extensive, his connections too deep. We needed to start fresh somewhere else. Are you sure about this? Lindsey asked as we finalized our plans. Leaving everything behind, starting over? I looked at her, brilliant, beautiful, strong enough to stand up to a father who'd controlled her entire life, and felt more certain than I'd ever felt about anything. I'm sure, but are you? You'd be giving up your family, your inheritance, everything you've known. Lindsey's smile was radiant. I'd be giving up my prison. Tanner, I've been trapped in my father's world my entire life. He's destroyed every relationship I've ever had, controlled every decision I've ever made. Tomorrow night, that ends. What if he doesn't give up? What if he follows us, tries to destroy our new life? Then we'll be ready for him. But Tanner, my father's power comes from operating in shadows, from people not knowing what he really is. Once the truth comes out, once people see him for the monster he is, that power disappears. I hoped she was right, but as I looked at Ray's threatening messages, at his detailed files documenting years of systematic abuse, I knew we were about to face the most dangerous man either of us had ever encountered. Tomorrow night, at Ray Warren's celebration, the war would finally come into the open. The morning of Ray's celebration dawned gray and cold, matching my mood as I prepared for what would either be our liberation or our destruction. I'd barely slept, my mind running through every possible scenario, every way Ray Warren might try to destroy us tonight. My first stop was Patricia Paulson's law office. Patricia was in her 50s, with silver hair and the kind of sharp intelligence that made opposing attorneys nervous. She'd built her practice defending people who couldn't defend themselves, and she had a particular hatred for bullies who used wealth and power to crush their victims. This is one of the most comprehensive cases of stalking and systematic abuse I've ever seen, Patricia said, reviewing the evidence we'd gathered. Ray Warren has been documenting his own crimes for years. Can we have him arrested? Eventually, yes. But Tanner, you need to understand. Ray Warren has connections throughout the legal system. Even with this evidence, he'll probably make bail within hours. And once he's out, he'll know you're fighting back. So what do you recommend? Patricia leaned back in her leather chair, her expression thoughtful. You need to make this public. Ray Warren's power comes from operating in the shadows. Once his behavior becomes public knowledge, his political connections won't be able to help him. How do we make it public without getting destroyed in the process? Very carefully, and with lots of backup plans. Patricia had spent the morning preparing legal documents that would protect Lindsey and me if we needed to leave the state quickly. She'd also contacted a journalist she trusted, someone who specialized in exposing corruption among the wealthy elite. Janet Morrison at the State Tribune, Patricia explained. She's been investigating Ray Warren for months, trying to find evidence of his illegal activities. She'll be very interested in what you have. Ray doesn't own the State Tribune? No, and they don't depend on his advertising money. Janet's editor has given her free rein to pursue this story. That was encouraging, but I knew Ray would have contingency plans. Men like him didn't survive for decades without learning how to neutralize threats. My next stop was my office, where Allison had been working since dawn to finalize our exit strategy. If tonight went badly, we needed to be able to disappear quickly. Everything's ready, Allison reported. No, I've incorporated a new company in Colorado, transferred our most important client contracts, and set up secure servers for all our data. If you need to leave tonight, the business can continue operating from anywhere. What about the employees? I've prepared severance packages for everyone, plus references and job placement assistance. Nobody gets hurt if we have to shut down the local operation. I felt a wave of gratitude for my business partner. Allison was risking her own career to help me escape Ray Warren's assault, and she was doing it without hesitation. Why are you doing this? I asked. Allison smiled grimly. Because I've seen what men like Ray Warren do to people. My father was like that. Used his money and connections to destroy anyone who threatened his control. I swore I'd never let another bully win if I could help it. While Allison finished the business preparations, I drove to the Oaks Bar and Grill for one final conversation with Derek. The lunch crowd was thinning out, and Derek was able to step away from the bar for a few minutes. You sure you want to do this? Derek asked, studying my face. Ray Warren doesn't lose gracefully. When cornered, he gets dangerous. I'm sure. But Derek, I want you to know. After tonight, you might be in danger too. Ray will know you helped me. Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been at risk for 3 years, watching that man sabotage people and being unable to stop him. At least now I can fight back. He handed me a small recording device, no bigger than a pen. Digital recorder. 12 hours of battery life. Picks up conversations from 30 feet away. If Ray says anything incriminating tonight, you'll have it on tape. Thank you for everything. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when Ray Warren is in prison where he belongs. The afternoon passed in a blur of final preparations. Chelsea arrived from out of town, bringing emotional support and her professional expertise in psychological manipulation. She'd be attending tonight's celebration as my guest, providing an independent witness to whatever Ray had planned. I've reviewed all the evidence you've gathered, Chelsea told me. Tanner, this man is a textbook psychopath. He's been systematically destroying his daughter's relationships for years, probably decades. The level of planning, the attention to detail, the complete lack of empathy. It's terrifying. What should we expect tonight? Ray Warren is going to try to humiliate you in front of his guests. He'll want to demonstrate his power, show everyone that he can destroy you at will, but he's also going to be overconfident. Men like Ray can't resist showing off their intelligence, their superiority. That's when he'll make mistakes. As evening approached, Lindsey and I met at her loft to prepare for the confrontation. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a simple black dress that was elegant but not flashy, appropriate for a family gathering, but not subservient to her father's expectations. I keep thinking about all the men he's destroyed, Lindsey said as she put on her earrings. Mason, Trevor, all the others. They never knew what hit them. Tonight, he finds out what it feels like to be on the receiving end. Lindsey turned from the mirror, her green eyes bright with determination. Tanner, whatever happens tonight, I want you to know you've given me something I never had before. What's that? The courage to fight back. We drove to the Warren estate in my Honda, following the familiar winding roads through the wealthy neighborhood where Lindsey had grown up. The house was ablaze with lights, cars filling the circular driveway. Ray's small celebration looked like it included at least 50 guests. He wants an audience, I observed. Dad always wants an audience when he's planning to destroy someone. He gets off on public humiliation. As we walked toward the front door, I felt the weight of Derek's recording device in my pocket, along with copies of all the evidence we'd gathered. Tonight, Ray Warren would finally face consequences for his crimes. The door opened before we could knock. Ray Warren stood in the entryway, resplendent in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his silver hair gleaming under the chandelier light. His smile was warm and welcoming, the perfect mask for the monster underneath. "Tanner," he said loudly, ensuring nearby guests could hear. "So glad you could make it. I was just telling everyone about our conversation last night. Come in, come in. We have so much to celebrate." As we entered the marble foyer, I saw the trap Ray had prepared. The guests weren't just family and friends. I recognized several local business leaders, a city councilman, 2 prominent lawyers, and what looked like half the social elite of the city. Ray had assembled an audience for my public destruction. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ray announced, his voice carrying across the crowded living room, "I'd like you to meet Tanner Grant, the young man who's been dating my daughter." The way he said "young man" made it sound like an insult. Several guests turned to look at me, their expressions ranging from polite interest to barely concealed disdain. "Tanner runs a small computer business," Ray continued, each word carefully chosen to diminish me. "Nothing too ambitious, but I'm sure it keeps him busy." I felt the familiar burn of humiliation, but this time it was different. This time, I knew exactly what Ray was doing, and I was ready for it. "Actually," I said clearly, my voice carrying across the room, "I run a software development company that's been growing steadily for 3 years. We specialize in solutions for small businesses." Ray's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. He'd expected me to be passive, submissive, easy to humiliate. Instead, I was fighting back. "Of course," Ray said smoothly. "I'm sure your clients appreciate your enthusiasm." The insult was subtle but clear. Enthusiasm was what you had when you lacked competence. Several guests chuckled, and I felt the familiar sting of social rejection. But then I remembered Derek's words. "He's done this before. You're not the first." I wasn't the first, but I was going to be the last. "Mr. Warren," I said, my voice calm and respectful, "I wanted to thank you for last night. Our conversation at the Oaks was very enlightening." Ray's eyes sharpened. He sensed something different in my tone, a confidence he hadn't expected. "I'm glad you found it educational," he replied carefully. "Oh, I did. I learned a great deal about your methods, your attention to detail, your dedication to protecting Lindsey's interests." Several guests were listening now, drawn by the undercurrent of tension in our exchange. Ray's smile was becoming more forced. "A father's job is never done," he said. "No," I agreed. "Some fathers go to extraordinary lengths to control their children's lives. The level of planning, the systematic approach, the careful documentation, it's really quite impressive." Ray's face was starting to flush. He knew I was talking about something specific, but he couldn't be sure how much I knew. "Tanner," Lindsey said suddenly, her voice carrying a warning, "perhaps we should get some champagne." But I wasn't done. Ray Warren had spent months planning my destruction, had poisoned me, had tried to destroy my business and have me arrested. Tonight, he was going to learn what it felt like to be afraid. "Actually," I said, reaching into my pocket, "I brought something to share with everyone. A little token of appreciation for Mr. Warren's hospitality." Ray's eyes widened as he saw me pull out a manila envelope. He knew what was inside. His own files, his own documentation of his crimes, turned against him. "Tanner," he said, his voice sharp with warning, "I don't think—" "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, "I'd like to tell you about a man who's been systematically destroying his daughter's relationships for years. A man who's been poisoning people, ruining careers, and using his wealth and connections to crush anyone who threatens his control." The room went completely silent. Ray Warren's face was white with shock and fury. "I'd like to tell you about Raymond Warren, and I have the evidence to prove every word." The silence in the Warren estate's living room was absolute. 50 of the city's most prominent citizens stood frozen, champagne glasses halfway to their lips as they processed what I'd just said. Ray Warren stood in the center of it all, his face cycling through shock, rage, and something that might have been fear. "Tanner," Ray said, his voice low and dangerous, "you're making a serious mistake." "Am I?" I opened the manila envelope and pulled out the first document, Ray's handwritten notes about pharmaceutical intervention and financial assault. "Because I have your own words here, Mr. Warren. Your own documentation of how you've been systematically destroying every man your daughter has ever dated." I held up the note so the nearby guests could see Ray's distinctive handwriting. "Subject shows unusual resilience. Standard psychological pressure insufficient. Recommend escalating to pharmaceutical intervention and direct financial assault. A murmur ran through the crowd. City Councilman Bradley stepped closer, his face grave. Ray, what is this? It's a lie, Ray said quickly, but his voice lacked conviction. This young man is obviously disturbed. I'm afraid the pressure of dating Lindsey has been too much for him. Has it? I pulled out Derek's USB drive, holding it up for everyone to see. Because I have security footage from the Oaks Bar and Grill showing you slipping something into my drink last night. Would you like to explain what that was, Mr. Warren? Ray's face went white. That's impossible. Is it? Derek Collins, the bartender, has been watching you for 3 years. He's seen you tamper with at least 7 different men, all of them Lindsey's boyfriends. He saved me last night by giving me activated charcoal and medication to settle my stomach. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small box Derek had given me, along with his handwritten note. Take this and make yourself vomit. He's done this before. You're not the first. Margaret Warren gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Raymond, tell me this isn't true. But Ray wasn't looking at his wife. His eyes were fixed on me with the intensity of a predator who'd suddenly found himself trapped. You have no idea what you're dealing with, he said quietly. Don't I? I pulled out more documents, the background checks, the financial reports, the photographs Ray had been collecting. I have your entire file on me, Mr. Warren. 8 months of surveillance, financial investigation, and planning. You decided to destroy me the day after Lindsey and I had our first date. I held up a photograph of myself leaving my office, date-stamped from months ago. You've been stalking me, gathering intelligence, preparing for my destruction like some kind of military operation. The crowd was pressing closer now, drawn by the horrifying spectacle unfolding before them. Judge Patricia Henley, a woman Ray had donated thousands to over the years, was staring at the evidence with undisguised shock. Ray, she said slowly, these are serious allegations. They're lies, Ray insisted, but sweat was beading on his forehead. This man is clearly unstable. He's probably been planning this for weeks, fabricating evidence. With your handwriting, I interrupted. In your private study, using your personal stationery. I handed Judge Henley one of Ray's planning documents. She studied it carefully, her expression growing darker. This appears to be genuine, she said quietly. Of course it's genuine, Lindsey said suddenly, stepping forward. Her voice was clear and strong, carrying across the silent room. Because my father has been controlling my entire life for 27 years. All eyes turned to Lindsey. She stood tall and proud, no longer the submissive daughter Ray had trained her to be. Mason Fitzgerald, she said, her voice growing stronger. Trevor Blackwood, Camden Pierce, Wesley Thornton, 4 men I cared about, 4 relationships my father destroyed. I thought they were weak, unable to handle the pressure of our family's expectations, but they weren't weak, they were poisoned. Margaret Warren sank into a chair, her face pale with shock. Lindsey, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious, Mother. Dad has been deliberately undermining my boyfriends for years, making them feel unwell and appear unstable and unreliable. Then he'd comfort me when the relationships fell apart, telling me they obviously weren't strong enough to be part of our family. Ray's composure was cracking. Lindsey, you don't know what you're saying. This man has obviously manipulated you. The way you manipulated me? Lindsey's voice was sharp as a blade. The way you've been manipulating me my entire life? She turned to address the crowd directly. My father doesn't want me to be happy. He wants me to be dependent on him, under his control. Every time I've tried to build a life of my own, he's destroyed it. I pulled out my phone and played one of Ray's threatening voicemails. Tanner, I hope you are feeling better. Perhaps it's a sign that you're not as resilient as you thought. Some people just aren't built for the pressures of our world. The voice was unmistakably Ray's, and the threat was clear to everyone in the room. You sent this the night after you poisoned me, I said, while I was home vomiting up whatever you'd put in my drink. Detective Paul Monroe stepped forward from the crowd. I hadn't seen him arrive, but apparently Ray's celebration included law enforcement. His face was grim as he studied the evidence. Mr. Warren, Detective Monroe said formally, I think we need to have a conversation. Paul, Ray said quickly, you know me. You know I would never. I know you've made substantial donations to the Police Benevolent Fund, Monroe interrupted. I also know you called me yesterday asking me to investigate Mr. Grant for fraud. But looking at this evidence, it seems like you're the one who's been committing crimes. Ray's face was flushed red now, his carefully maintained composure completely gone. This is a setup. Can't you see what's happening here? This man is trying to destroy me. The way you tried to destroy me? I asked quietly. The way you destroyed Mason Fitzgerald, Trevor Blackwood, and all the others? I pulled out the final piece of evidence. Ray's detailed files on all of Lindsey's previous boyfriends, complete with psychological profiles and destruction timelines. You kept trophies, I said, handing the files to Detective Monroe. Documentation of every man you've destroyed, every relationship you've sabotaged. You're not just a criminal, Mr. Warren. You're a serial abuser who's been getting away with it for years. The detective flipped through the files, his expression growing darker with each page. Mr. Warren, I'm going to need you to come with me for questioning. I'm not going anywhere, Ray snarled. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I own half this city. I've donated millions to buy protection for your crimes, Judge Henley interrupted. Her voice was cold with disgust. Ray, I've known you for 20 years. I thought you were a respected member of this community, but this is monstrous. Ray looked around the room, seeing his carefully cultivated reputation crumbling before his eyes. The social elite who'd once courted his favor were backing away, their faces showing revulsion and horror. You don't understand, Ray said desperately. Everything I did was to protect Lindsey. These men weren't good enough for her. They would have hurt her, used her. The way you've been using her, I interrupted, controlling her, manipulating her, destroying every chance she's had at happiness. I gave her everything, Ray shouted, his mask finally slipping completely. Money, education, social position, I made her into someone worthy of respect. You made her into a prisoner, Lindsey said quietly, and I'm done being your victim. She reached into her purse and pulled out a letter, the one we'd prepared the night before. This is my formal notice, Dad. I'm cutting all contact with you. I'm moving out of state, away from your influence and your control. You'll never have power over my life again. Ray stared at the letter like it was a weapon pointed at his heart. Lindsey, you can't be serious. I'm your father. Everything I have will be yours someday. I don't want it, Lindsey said firmly. I don't want your money, your connections, or your toxic legacy. I want my freedom. You'll be nothing without me, Ray screamed, his composure completely shattered. You think you can survive in the real world? You think this pathetic little man can provide for you the way I have? We'll find out, I said calmly. I pulled out the final document, legal papers transferring my business assets to a new corporation in Colorado. Because we're leaving tonight, Mr. Warren, and you have no power over us anymore. Ray's face contorted with rage. I'll destroy you both. I'll hunt you down wherever you go. I'll make sure you never work again, never have a moment's peace. No, Detective Monroe said firmly, stepping between Ray and us. You won't, because you're going to be in jail. He pulled out handcuffs, and Ray's eyes widened with disbelief. You can't arrest me. I haven't been convicted of anything. You just threatened 2 people in front of 50 witnesses, Monroe replied. That's good enough for now. We'll sort out the rest at the station. As the handcuffs clicked around Ray's wrists, he looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, Grant. You have no idea what you've started. Yes, I do, I replied quietly. I've started the end of your reign of terror. I turned to address the shocked crowd one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, you've all seen the evidence tonight. Raymond Warren is a criminal who's been using his wealth and connections to destroy innocent people for years. I hope you'll remember this the next time someone with money and power tells you that their victims are lying. Judge Henley nodded grimly. We will, Mr. Grant. And I think I speak for everyone here when I say we're sorry for what you've endured. As Detective Monroe led Ray toward the door, the broken man turned back one last time. Lindsey, he pleaded, you're my daughter. You can't do this to me. Lindsey looked at her father, the man who'd controlled and manipulated her for 27 years, who'd destroyed every relationship she'd ever had, who'd poisoned the man she loved, and her voice was steady as steel. I'm not doing this to you, Dad. You did this to yourself. Ray Warren's face crumpled as the full weight of his defeat hit him. His empire of fear and control had collapsed in a single evening, brought down by his own arrogance and the courage of his victims to fight back. As the police car pulled away from the Warren estate, Lindsey took my hand. Ready to start our new life? I looked at the woman who'd chosen freedom over fear, love over control, and felt a surge of pride and hope that made